Testing, testing. This thing is on. Oh, and then the bright lights. All right. I would like to ask a point of, what do they call that, organizational privilege. If you are here, can you move into like these center 3 sections? Because I can't see over there, and I can't see over there, and you probably won't be able to see the slides all that well. So if you can move more, somewhere in this middle, that would be really great. So keep those last sections empty. Thank you. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Lisa Sanders, and I am very blessed to be the Director of Science and Technology at Special Operations Command. And this is the first of 3 sessions this week where our directorate will be engaging with you. The one thing to note is that each one of our sessions is different. This particular session is focused on providing an overview of the SOCOM S&T enterprise. So this is the most general of the sessions. Our session on Wednesday, tomorrow, I will be doing in coordination with one of our users. It's going to be focused on the future. We're going to talk about the future operating environment and how we are seeking and developing innovative, disruptive technology. And then our third session on Thursday will be a roundtable session where we will have smaller groups. Instead of one person standing up here and talking to the group and then taking questions, we will have 4 different tables set up, and we will speed date where we will do about 20 minutes with each table. And so within the hour and a half, you can move through all 4 tables. The tables will talk about our virtual symposium and our broad agency announcement. Then we'll have a table that talks about experimentation, technical experimentation. Then we'll have a table that I will be leading that talks about our innovation and foundry. And then our 4th table will be on our discovery, dealing with small business and academics. All right, with that, I will go ahead and get started. So first slide, please. Next. Next slide, please. Oh, I guess I've got the thing. All right, well, let's do this way. Oh, it's really bad when S&T has the technical problems. All right, so this is our vision. It's a lot of words there, and you all can read, so I'm not going to read them to you. But just recognize that the soft operator is at the heart of everything we do. During this session, I'm going to talk to you, again, it's an overview, so I'm going to talk to you about our budget and scope of the portfolio. I'll talk about how we execute our ecosystem and what the environment looks like for us. It is different than a program office. I'll talk about how we do incremental technology insertion, how we do disruptive technology exploration. I'll go over what's important to us, our hyper-enabled operator concept, FY19 opportunities, technical experimentation, and our Vulcan and CRADA tools. This work? There we go. All right, so this is essentially the scope of our organization. We execute all science and technology resources for Special Operations Command. It's 6263 for those of you that speak that language. For those of you that don't, it's applied research technology demonstration. We don't do basic lab research. Those of you that speak, again, technology, we're looking at TRL 4 to 7 typically. We might do something as early as a TRL 3, but you are not going to come to us and get funding for a TRL 1 or 2 project out of SOCOM S&T. We just don't work in that space. Our end on the other side, so we don't do a lot of basic research. We also aren't doing platform integration. That's done in the program offices. So we focus on an operational prototype, a technology demonstration, and a technology insertion. We have a variety of acquisition strategies that we utilize. We do a fair amount of open competition. We do some IDIQs. We do a broad agency announcement, which I'll talk about a little bit further. We also leverage the services, DARPA, Department of Energy, other government development activities that are there. There is not a single rule of thumb in terms of the cost of a project for us, the length of a project for us. It is all over the map. We'll do a project that's $100,000 in 3 months. We'll do a project that's $5.5 million over 4 years. It just depends upon the project. Again, the deliverable could be an early capability study, all the way up to a relevant prototype, not a full integration. Our funding, overall, by the time that you add everything up together that we have, it ends up in the neighborhood of $100 million. That's divided into a bunch of different pots. We execute the Small Business Innovative Research Funds for SOCOM, and that's about $20 million. So that's not awarded through our general BAA, that's done through the SBIR process. And I'll talk a little bit about some of our innovations there in a minute. Those of you that are familiar with Talos, the funding for Talos is loaded in this line. So within that about $100 million, this year there's about $17 million of SOCOM S&T money that goes specifically to Talos. All right, next. What does our environment look like? So as you can see, this is a really simple environment, right? This is supposed to make it be funny. You're supposed to laugh at that. All right, so I have to thank Ms. Damien Gwynn down here for creating this chart for me, but it does a really good job of capturing the fact that the science and technology portfolio does not look like a program executive office. If you go to the ones across the hallway and the PEOs talk to you, what you will see is organizational and they're not stovepipes in a bad way, but they're centered around product lines. We are not just centered around product lines. Our space involves, if you see the blue stuff on the left, that's our SOCOM acquisition side of the house. It works with the SOCOM enterprise. But the adversary, just as it does with everybody else, the adversary gets a vote, and that's shown in red. But one of the things that we can do in S&T is understand the space where the adversary's skills and tactics, we can develop countermeasures for that because we are left of requirement. We also work with the broader Department of Defense. I talked about that a little bit on the last slide. We do then connect into the program executive offices for tech insertion into programs of record. We, though, also link into the futures world. It's my responsibility to ensure that the command as a whole is aware of where disruptive technology, either on our part or the adversary's part, is going to affect the way that SOCOM does business in the future, near, mid, and far. And then the last piece, those of you that were in the room the last session, you heard the discussion about SOFWORX. We're also an interface to the innovation ecosystem. SOFWORX is one of those interfaces, but we work across a broad group of innovative technology providers. So this is the chart that talks about how we do incremental insertion of technology into programs of record. We're organized, and this is the closest that we get to a PEO. We are aligned by commodity areas, and you can see those commodity areas there. But you'll notice that there's not, for instance, a commodity area that says maritime. There's not a commodity area that says rotary wing. What you have is a commodity area that says optics and sensors. So if those sensors go on a rotary wing platform, my optics working group is working with PEO rotary wing. If it goes on a boat, they're working with maritime. If it's something that goes on a soldier, they're working with PEO software. Because technology, particularly the kind of technology that gives you a competitive advantage, is sort of platform agnostic. The alignment we've done is by commodity area. So optics and sensors. Human performance is another area. That's one we don't even have a program office that it goes to. We're working with the Preservation of the Force and Family Group. We're also working with the command surgeon there, and we're trying to understand where would be a transition partner for a human performance technology. You know, so if it's something that's in the medical space, that goes through our medical community. But sometimes the concept isn't medical, and it's a nutraceutical or something like that. So how do we work to transition that? That's an area that's been of growing interest. You don't see C4 as a specific working group. What you see is advanced communications. Again, if it's a handheld system, it's going to go to PEO C4. But if it's an integration of a unique antenna, it might go to the platform program office. All right. So I talked about the incremental insertion of technology. That's against areas that we are currently working today. I am not going to go into great depth on this chart because tomorrow I will talk through it in great detail, but we have developed a process, and that's what's shown in this build chart, to get after disruptive technology. The working groups that I showed you on the last chart, they've got great relationships with capability gaps from programs of record. They've got great relationships with our user components, and they do a really good job of figuring out, here's what I can't do today, and here's what I need to overcome that gap. What they're not structured to be able to do is say, here's something I didn't even know existed, or to take a concept that maybe came out of a SOFWorks collaboration event and do something with it. This futures process, it's mission-based. So we look at a mission we want to achieve and think about all the different ways that we can do it. It's very different. The other thing that we've discovered is that if we ask the same people to get after disruptive technology, oftentimes we end up with a very similar solution we would have gotten if we had done an incremental change. We don't see disruptive technology coming out very effectively when we ask the same people that we're asking to do incremental technology. So we're using diverse participants in this process. We are bringing operators at the middle of it, though, but it may not be the same people that normally would come to write a capability requirements document. We may be getting, a very junior operator who's just come from the battlefield to sit down with us and think about how he could use that technology. We are seeking the entrepreneur marketplace. We're leveraging the SOFWorks Develop Maker Hacker marketplace, and we're bringing academics into that conversation. What this does, the first 3 steps of this process, you notice that we build with environment, mission, objective, and strategic conditions before we ever talk about technology. What that allows us to do is get the context. Rather than trying to force fit a technology into a need, we start with the context and then look at where technology can help us do that. That lets us see non-material solutions and help us find unexpected problems. So I will talk about this, as I said, in great detail tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. All right. So when we started engaging in disruptive technology, one of the problems that we found is that when we started talking to the entrepreneur venture capitalist marketplace, one of the things they told us is that for everything that they go forward with, they typically look at about 1,000 ideas before they actually find a winner. We don't normally deal with those sorts of numbers. We may look at 400 white papers in our broad agency announcement and look to award 20 projects. That's not, I'm off by an order of magnitude there. So one of the things that we realized we had to do was open our funnel, get more people to give us ideas about how we could do things. So this page is a clip of an article that I put out on LinkedIn the 1st of March. And it links to our SOCOM homepage, Hard Problems. How many of you have seen this? Yes, a few of you, okay? You can Google Lisa Sanders LinkedIn, Hard Problems, and it'll come up, all right? The other thing is, how many of you gone to the new SOCOM Doing Business with Us page? A few of you have. What we tried to do, we've just rebooted that overall acquisition Doing Business with Us page, and we're trying to make it more user-friendly. The old page was great if you knew who you wanted to talk to, but one of the feedbacks that we get a lot of times is people don't know who to talk to and they can't figure out who to talk to. Now if you go to the SOCOM homepage, Doing Business with Us will help you figure that out. But these hard problems that we identified, and those of you that were here last year, I talked about them last year. It's small unit dominance, mission assured communications, and signature management. And those hard problems are written in plain English. They're written in such a way that your grandmother could understand it, so that people that aren't familiar with our areas of interest are able to give us things that are relevant to our problem. You don't have to understand what I mean by contested environment in order to answer this question. So then the next page here talks about, it's in between the hard problems, which are a 30,000-foot level. Here's the mission that we want to achieve. And the other way that normally technology folks talk to you is in terms of capability gaps that are usually a list of, here's what I want to buy. I want lighter body armor. I want power that's smaller and lasts longer. I want, things that, can see through walls. Instead of putting out that sort of a list this year, we took guidance from the National Defense Strategy, and we looked at those bottom-up capability gaps, and we grouped them into focus areas. What we're trying to do, again, is not tell you what we want to buy. We're trying to tell you what we want to do. So tactically relevant situational awareness. Oh, I'm sorry, one other thing about this. Generally speaking, the top level isn't about a technology. I don't have a top-level gap for hypersonics or machine learning, because machine learning for machine learning's sake is not providing me a capability. The capability that I want is a situational awareness in the environment that I'm going to be operating in. That's what I mean by tactically relevant. So artificial intelligence is probably a tool that will help me do that, but it's not the deliverable that I'm looking for. I'm looking for an ability to be aware of my environment in the way that I need to achieve my mission. Okay. Communications, navigation in all environment. There's been a lot of emphasis on GPS-denied environment, and GPS-denied is really important to us. But there's lots of other things that can make us have a difficult time communicating and navigating. Sometimes it's an urban canyon and you've got a bunch of multipath bouncing around. Sometimes it is that the signature that would be required for me to navigate is so high that I'm going to give away my, it's going to create risk to my mission. So I may not be able to rely upon the normal ways that I get position or communication, because it's going to have an operational impact. So how can I communicate and navigate no matter where I am at any point in time? Obviously, that's tied to the mission assured communications hard problem, but it's a little bit more specific. Tailored lethality. In the National Defense Strategy, Secretary Mattis was very clear that lethality was very important to the Department of Defense. But one of the things that from a soft enterprise we need to be able to do is scale that lethality, because there are times that actually being fully lethal may not enable us to conduct the mission effectively. If I need to be able to speak to the hostage taker to understand some information, if I have actually killed the hostage taker, then I can't complete my mission. So I need to be able to scale up from less than lethal, but there are times that I need to take something and be more lethal. If I'm in an overmatched condition the wrong way, where I have a few guys surrounded by a lot of people, I might want to take something that maybe is not normally lethal and make it more lethal. So scaling and tailoring our lethality for people and material is really important. Reversibility matters too. There's times where if you've been around the community for a while, we used to talk about the 15-minute kill somebody for 15 minutes. That concept still is conveyed within tailored lethality. And then the last focus area that we have is biotechnologies. That's an area that we truly need to understand both the opportunities and the risks that are existing today and in the near future in the area of biotechnologies. Again, you can all read the paper, you can all read science journals, and the do-it-yourself biohacking environment. We truly need to understand what that means to us in our ability to do our soft mission. And then we also, I already talked about human performance. We want to understand how to bring our operators to the optimum performance throughout their entire career and do it safely. So that's what that focus area is all about. All right. This chart is a precursor. You guys get a little heads up. Those of you that are going to be here at 1 o'clock to hear the commander and the acquisition executive talk, you're going to hear a lot about the hyper-enabled operator. So I believe this is the first official slide that's out on the hyper-enabled operator. Recognize that hyper-enabled operator is a concept. It is not a deliverable product. I'm not going to go buy a hyper-enabled operator system. It is a framework that allows us to explore for whatever operator we're talking about, whether that is somebody doing a security forces assistance and training a partner on how to do harbor security. How do I make them the most effective they can be in achieving that mission? Most of you are sitting there with a phone in your hand. That is a tool to enable you to not get lost, to have instant communication, to be able to know what kind of tree that is, because you can pull that out of your phone. How do I take that kind of an approach and other technologies to enable my operator to do the mission that he's assigned the most effectively at the point of need? So we think there's four pillars that make that up. I talked about the phone, which leads you to the concept of communication. So that communication is really important, and it is a underlying you have to have the communications in order to enable the operator, whether it's the operator to communicate amongst his team or to be able to pull information, so what we talk about reach back, so they can use the communications device to get information you don't have, or if you, the operator on the edge, have information that needs to go back, you have to have a communications method to do that. Computing. If you're going to give that operator on the edge the ability to do their mission effectively, they're probably going to need to be able to do some computing, especially as you get into situational awareness and using artificial intelligence. Some aspect of that is going to need to be in the hands of that operator to do their mission. I already talked about through the communications that you have information at the operation level that you need to push back, but I also need to merge and mesh. I think about this when we do mesh communications. I think they're going to see mesh sensing happening as well, which is why computing is so important. So wherever that data comes from, whether that data is something that I knew about before I came in, I might have downloaded a Google Maps so that I know this building is this tall and there's wires that are at 12 feet above ground, so I'm not going to catch them as I come in. Or maybe it's information that I get on the objective that I have to merge with that picture. Then the last piece is really, really important as we get to this, that machine interface. All of these things that are on the left side, those are all machine. Machine drives that, but the human has to interface with them. That interface needs to be tailorable. It needs to be adaptable. It cannot be the same for every person. It probably won't be the same at every point in the mission. So the objective of hyper-enabling the operator is so that we can get from reactive to predictive. If I can have the right information available to me at the right time, then the mission becomes much safer and much more effective. We're not responding to the observe, orient, decide, and act, the OODA loop. We're before the OODA loop even happens. All right, you will hear a lot more about that this afternoon. All right, switching gears. This gets back to many of you are here because you care about how do I work with special operations in the near term. Well, from the S&T portfolio, it is through our FY19 virtual symposium. We are spending our FY19 money largely through our broad agency announcement, and the way that you understand what we want in our broad agency announcement is through visiting our virtual symposium. We started doing this last year. Rather than having a singular industry day and limiting the people that are able to come because it's only people that can come for that day, we're harnessing the power of the web, and we're making this available. The areas for FY19 are what are shown in this chart. They're aligned with our focus areas, but not exactly the same. Focus areas are broader, more strategic in nature. This is how am I spending the next increment of money that I have. You do have to register at that webpage that's shown below in order to view the symposium slides, but you can see all of them from that point in time. We have a booth over in the marketplace over in Ballroom D. Damian Gwen, raise your hand. Damian Gwen will be there. She is the person that's working all of the project execution that's going to come out of that BAA. If you have any questions about it, if you have difficulty with registering, anything like that, go see Damian over in Ballroom D. And then as far as the future operating environment, that along with our foundry is what we're going to talk about tomorrow in here. Technical experimentation. This is something that's unique to the SOCOM S&T enterprise. How many of you have been to a TE? Raise your hands. I see the same hands. This is funny. I can tell the people that have done business with us in the past. Our technical experimentation, it's not a test. It's not a trade show. What we do with technical experimentation is identify a focus area. We do them 3 to 4 times a year. We identify a focus area, and that focus area is based upon our user needs. And then we ask industry, academia, government labs, technology developers of all types. We ask them to identify things that they would like to experiment with that are related to that need. So you can see the first one, the 18.3 that's coming up, C4 Cyber ISR Small UAS Systems. So if your company does that announcement is open right now, right, Dan? Nope, sorry, it's closed. Okay, but we'll just use it as an example. So if your company did work in that area and you wanted to go into an operationally relevant environment and see how it works in the field with operators pushing buttons, and assessing that, you could submit an experimentation nomination. And then the way that works, you submit an experimentation nomination, that gets reviewed, and if we have a user, and that user can be somebody at a component, somebody at a unit, or somebody in a program office, if they're interested in seeing that, they vote for it. But when they vote for it, they commit that they will come and do an assessment. So you will have users that utilize your equipment, and they will give you feedback on how that equipment functioned in comparison to their expectations. So we do not pay anybody to come to experimentation, but we also give you the assessment coming out the back end. It's a great way, if you've got a demonstration or a test coming up and you want to get feedback when it isn't scored, this is a great way for you to get operational feedback at a time before you potentially have a developmental test that's going to require you to pass or fail in order to get a milestone decision. As I said, we typically hold 3 to 4 of these a year. You can see 18.3 would have been our third one. This year we've actually added a fourth one based upon our users. So in September, we will be holding a Surface Maritime event in Little Creek, Virginia. That announcement either is open or is opening soon. So we use social media a lot for this. There's a very active LinkedIn group for technical experimentation. So again, you can go to LinkedIn and search SOCOM's technical experimentation, and that will give you all the latest information. And then you can also get announcements when we are going to open up a RFI for the next event. So you won't, say, oh gosh, I wish I would have known about that C4 event. I would have applied for it. The next one that's coming up after that is our event in Avon Park, and we are going to be focusing on the 4 pillars of the hyper-enabled operator. All right. And then they will have a table at the Thursday roundtable. So if you're interested in that, you can come in and see them at the roundtable. Vulcan. Ms. Stratton-Fikes mentioned this. Vulcan is a collaboration tool that we host. We are hoping to move it from a science and technology hosted platform to something that somebody else is responsible for, but we will still continue to use that. It's a social media-like tool. It is on the open internet, but it gives us an ability to collaborate. So what you can do as industry or the technology provider is upload your Scout card. That tells us anything you want to tell us about your technology. All right, you can give us the slick sheets from marketing. You can put videos up there. The most important thing you want to put up there is your contact information so that people know how to reach you. This way, instead of having to schedule an appointment and fly to meet somebody, you can share that information with the entire SOF enterprise. Right now, we have over 3,000 government users on Vulcan, 3,259 as of, I think it was last Friday when we did that. There are over 200 government enterprise organizations that are on there, everything from the Department of Homeland Security, DARPA, we have just the Army's Rapid Capabilities Office. I couldn't even begin to name all of the organizations. Every one of our components has representatives that are on that, et cetera. Then as industry, we've got over 10,000 commercial organizations that are loaded in our database, and we've got well over 3,000 Scout cards. We use this as a market survey tool. We will go in, I will tell you, when Counter UAS first came up, we went in and typed in Counter UAS and Vulcan and started the dialogue and made sure that we reached out to the people that had that kind of capability when we started Thunderdrone. As we're using Vulcan as the means for our assessment on experimentation so that everybody across the enterprise can see what the assessment was. This way you don't have to rely upon, hey, who wrote that assessment up for me? It was Bob, and Bob's out in San Diego because he's at NSW, and I need to reach out to him, and if he moves to a different organization, I may lose that assessment. This way it's all available across the government. The other nice thing is that industry, when you put a Scout card in, you keep it up. Let's say that you put a Scout card in today, and 6 months from now you've conducted a test event and you've got some test results. you can put that information in Vulcan and update your scout card. And if you don't want to put the details of it because you're, either for security reasons or because you're concerned about, that's sensitive information, you can say test results are available from the contact person. So that's a way for you to communicate with us that's very low drag for you. Vulcan also has a place over in the Innovation Marketplace, and my team, as they're going around and visiting with you, they're going to be handing you Vulcan Scout cards and telling you to go upload your information in Vulcan. It's really fast. I'm not kidding. You can upload a Scout card in Vulcan in about 15 minutes. Tamron talked about, the lottery. We want to make it low drag. We want to keep that very, very low drag. All right. CRADAs, Cooperative Research and Development Agreements. How many of you were at the CRADA crash course yesterday? At least I got a few people that weren't the same that raised their hand yet before. CRADAs is a way for us to explore areas of common interest. CRADAs are not a contract. There is no money that changes hands with a CRADA. But we have in place an overarching CRADA that is an almost instantaneous way for us to begin a dialogue. It protects the industry partner because normally if I don't have a CRADA, I can only tell an industry person the same thing I tell every industry person. We can't explore areas of common interest because of a potential conflict of interest. Under a CRADA, we can have that conversation, help to understand whether there's areas where you need more information in order to understand how to spend your own internal resources, your IR&D money. We close out any ongoing efforts that are done under a CRADA before we do a competition, so that there's a level playing field. Everybody is able to come in and access a CRADA, and if we have open CRADAs in a technology area, we don't conduct a competition with anybody that has an open CRADA or open work plan with us. If you have more questions about that, also by the Vulcan table, there will be a CRADA point of contact there that can give you more information. All right. And this last chart is just a takeaway chart. Again, it's an eye chart. I don't expect anybody to read it, but when you get your slides from NDIA, this gives you the websites to get to all of those things that I talked about. Okay? And with that, questions. And I also will be using Slido. Those of you that were not here for the first session, if you were not here for the first session, you can either go to the Sophic app, and over on the left side, there is a thing that says Slido, or you can Google slido.com. Sophic is the room number that you put in the little box, and you can type in your questions. They'll be vetted at the back and come up here. That is the way we're taking questions in the large forum. You'll notice that there aren't microphones stood up. So if you have a question for me, you need to send it in through the slido.com Sophic page. So hopefully there'll be some that come up. The other thing is look at what's in that list. If there's something that you like, that you've got that same question, hit the like button and it'll keep re-scrolling, so I'll be able to tell who has that. All right, so the first question that's up here is, what work is SOCOM S&T doing with artificial intelligence? How can that technology help special operators, and how much investment is going into this area? I will tell you that's an area that is in our FY19 look. It's also part of what we think is going to enable the hyper-enabled operator. Right now, I have not spent any money from SOCOM S&T on artificial intelligence. We were trying to explore what we were trying to achieve with artificial intelligence rather than just advancing the science of artificial intelligence. But in FY19, we anticipate that we will do some projects that are specifically related to AI. SOCOM as a whole has largely been focused on the MAVEN project, which is using ISR data to provide tipping and queuing. But so we have done some exploratory things where we brought in subject matter experts, talked about how do we even define the language so that the people that are working that space understand our problem sets. But that's what we're doing right now. All right, the next question up here is, how do I decide the best outlets for S&T requirements, whether I use SBIRS, CRADAs, Tylo, Vulcan, SOFWORKS, and what are my decision criteria? When it comes down to executing resources in terms of money, that gets done in our working groups that I talked about. So we are the open door. I don't give more weight to something that came in through the BAA than I give to something that came in through Vulcan in terms of exploring the space of whether or not we should work on that technology. If I'm actually going to do a FAR-based contract, I need to have that come in through the BAA because that's our contracting mechanism. But I might take something that came in through Vulcan, Tylo, or SoftWorks and do a non-traditional acquisition strategy that comes off of there. Our decision criteria is really based upon that interface of the working group membership. So I've got members from the program offices. We might have experts from the laboratories that help us understand how feasible something is or not. We've got program office representatives, and we have our TDWG lead. And so the answer is it depends. There is not a singular best appropriate or way to come in. People ask me this all the time, so let me give you the general guidance that I give to everybody. If you have a product, okay, something that you can explain, it doesn't have to be a fully available product, but something that you can kind of touch and feel, even if it's, a lab prototype, you want to go down, I would put that in Vulcan as a scout card, and if you have not got a way to get into Vulcan because you do need to be asked to put a scout card in, I would send in a Tylo request. We are working to make that seamless, where if you send something in through our technology industry liaison office, that we can immediately pull it into Vulcan. Right now, we don't have that in place, but again, I told you the Vulcan process is pretty easy. So if you have something that you can touch, that's the best way to do it. If you have, hey, I'm kind of thinking that this idea might be helpful, but I'm not quite sure if it would or exactly how you would use it, that's where I think SoftWorks shines. That's the area where you would sit down and go through with users, hackers, makers, how would I use this? And is this even the right concept? And that area helps you get it to the point where now you can put it into Vulcan. If you really want to co-develop or you need something from us, like you need to be able to go out to a test range and try something, that's where a cooperative research and development agreement works, where we have something that you need and you want to develop something that we might need in the future. So CRADAs are require us to have a value on both sides. The government needs to get something and the industry person needs to get something. I cannot do a CRADA if the industry partner doesn't get anything. So if you can't do a CRADA to me that says, hey, I'm going to give you this and you can have it, well, then you don't get anything out of it. You can loan it to me for us to do an assessment on, and then you get an assessment back. That's something that you get that you wouldn't get without a CRADA. So hopefully that explains the CRADA aspect. And decision criteria, again, it depends upon what we're trying to achieve. All right. All right. So the next question that's up here is there a listing prior to the TE events of the technologies and industry that will be there? There's a government available listing of that, but we have not yet been taken the step that we can share with you before you go to TE who's going to be at TE. Because sometimes the company will invite them, but they don't come. So we don't always know that. We can take that as something, if that's of value to you, we can consider trying to figure out how to make that happen. Again, there will be a TE table on Thursday, and there's also TE folks that are available in Ballroom D. So please explore that a little bit further with Dan Bernard. Raise your hand, please, Dan, and his team. All right, next question that's up there. What is the timeline for the hyper-enabled operator? Well, how fast can we make it happen? I think there's going to be things that are going to spin out really quickly, okay, that they're available today, and it's really going to be a question of let's just write a tactic to be able to use something that's commercially available. So some of that stuff I could see spinning out even as early as 6 months, but I mean, easily within an 18-month to 2-year time frame. There's going to be some things that I believe are going to be in the hands of our operators somewhere between 6 months and 2 years. If it's available now, and all I need to do is figure out how to use it. All right, but some of those things are long-term. If I really need to understand how I'm going to use artificial intelligence at the objective to provide a positive identification for either the hostage that I want to rescue or a building that I'm going to be in, there's a lot of questions that have to be answered about how do I validate some of these tools. When you start talking about the realm of artificial intelligence, think about how long it's taking for Google to do the self-driving car. And that's because people are trying to understand what happens when things go wrong. And unfortunately, the normal way that we validate things like that is we test every possible outcome, and that's how we determine what's safe. But in the world of artificial intelligence, you can't do that because every outcome is changing with every input that you put in. So we're going to need to work through some of those capabilities through some pretty serious policy questions. So some of those I think are going to be 10 years in the making. But I do think that you're going to see a fairly substantial amount of products that are coming out in the 2 to 5 year window of time. And then it's the ones that are policy constrained that are going to take us longer. All right. Let me see how we're doing on time. All right, I've got, just so you know, just like 3 or 4 more minutes. So I'm going to look through here. The next question up here has to do with SOCOM engaging with other government technology developers. And one of the things that we use to do that engagement is through Vulcan, because that's an area that all government enterprises can share. So, for instance, the Army's Rapid Capabilities Office, they're using Vulcan as their tech scouting platform. They came to the last experimentation that we did, and they ran a counter-UAS experiment in coordination with our SOCOM TE. And so, that's an area where we're sharing very, very closely on specific areas. I personally sit on 2 of the Office of Secretary of Defense's focus areas on their executive committees. So in the biomedical realm and in the human systems, because again, the human operator is very important to Special Operations Command. I sit on the OSD senior level policy board, which helps understand how the cross-department activities can deliver capability effectively. We work with DARPA, we work with DTRA. I can't say any more than we work with them on a regular basis, and it's largely driven by the common areas of interest. Sometimes we use their funding, and we're the first adopter. Sometimes we share funding on those sorts of things. Sometimes we use the laboratory subject matter expertise, because I have a very wide but not a very deep set of people in my office. So if I'm really looking for somebody that understands antenna design, I'm not going to necessarily buy that in my office. I'm going to go rely upon another government laboratory to provide that expertise, because next year it might be the next generation of optics, or it might be artificial intelligence. So we use the labs and the services to draw down on some of that subject matter expertise. Okay, the next question that I want to talk about is if SOCOM utilizes other transaction authority. The answer is we do. We don't do it for everything, obviously. We are still largely a FAR-based contracting organization, but we've got some projects that are awarded through other transaction authority that I use another agency to do that. I've got some stuff through the DOTC consortium that we've awarded. There's some that our own contracting shop is awarding another transaction authority for us. And I will tell you, sometimes a lot of people think OTAs are like the buzzword and they're the best thing since sliced bread and they're going to be the only way you should go. It's not always faster to go through an OTA. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. The biggest value that I find with an OTA is that I can reach a technology provider that might not be able to get a FAR-based contract, either because they don't have a cost accounting system in place, or they're just not interested in putting it in place, that kind of thing. So we're looking to use OTAs typically where there's vendors that I cannot reach through other avenues. All right, and with that, I thank you all for your time. And if you want to talk more about the futures concept and the operating environment, come back and see us tomorrow at 8 o'clock and the roundtable on Thursday. Thank you very much.
for your protection and ours, do you understand?